Pat, you brought up 31-0 against Clemson in 2016. I was actually going to go there for this reason. That was a pick'em game by Vegas, and Ohio State gets blown out. I didn't anticipate that happening. I didn't see that coming. So there's a result that, for me at least, I thought that was going to be a competitive game, really close game. Ohio State probably going to win. I think they were a slight favorite, and they get blown out. But going into a game, I cannot remember going into a game having this much uncertainty about how good this team is. I know how talented they are.
Right.
I just don't know how good they are, where their heads are at. And I can't even go back in time and think of a game this big, a playoff game, a BCS championship or bowl game, where I just didn't have a good read on the team. And to me, they're a bit of a wild card.
Well, I think, when was the last time they lost to Michigan and were in a situation to, play in a game like this? Yeah. I think, it goes, for me, it keeps going back to that game. Sure, there were issues against Penn State. They weren't great against Maryland, but, if they find a way to beat Michigan, even if it's a ugly, close, if that second half kind of plays out like the first half, and it doesn't look great, but you do it. I think there are still some questions for sure about this team. I think there's questions about Georgia. I just think that the fact that is the last memory Buckeye fans and media, people around the country, whoever have of the Buckeyes, that creates those questions. You're not coming in on a win and then a Big Ten championship game and whatnot. I obviously wasn't covering Georgia last year, but I imagine there were some pretty legitimate questions about that team after they lost to Alabama. I believe game wasn't even really that close.
17 points.
Yeah. So in the SEC championship game, and obviously we know how that story ended. They go on and win the national championship, beating Alabama in that game, which could be the story we've got here, slightly different without it being a conference championship game. But I've said it a lot these last few weeks. I may have said it to you, Mark. This was the number 2 team in the country almost the entire season. The talent, as you said, is there to play with and potentially beat Georgia. The question you said of, they're talented, you're not sure just how really good they are. To me, that's somewhat on the players, but also very much on the coaches. The handling of the situation when you have that much talent is it seems easy, right? You just, you call the plays and the guys go execute, and it's not, but I think it's fair to question Ryan Day and some of the coaches on his staff about, why they haven't been able to completely maximize this talent, because in addition to the Michigan game, they didn't play probably a full 60-minute game all season. Even in the games where they won by a lot, I think you can nitpick quite a bit. And, I think that's probably true about any team in any season. But just to me, it felt like there was more of that this year, even in the convincing wins. So, this should be, I said this on a show I did yesterday, this should be Ohio State as the underdog, as the number 4 team in the country. Like, pressure's all on Georgia to go win the national championship again. And it feels like, yeah, there's certainly pressure on Georgia, and, maybe I'm too close to the Ohio State side of things, but there is definitely pressure on Ohio State that's been created because of all the questions about the coaching and the way they finished the recruiting class didn't help things either, because it wasn't like there was a boost from, landing a couple of those 5-star kids that they missed out on. So I think it's generated some more pressure on Ryan Day and the staff and these players that didn't need to be there in other circumstances.
I made the same explanation to somebody recently. I said, while the narrative for most 4 seeds in the playoffs is it's house money, glad to be here, let's take our shot, with Ohio State, this is the expectation basically every year, but especially this year. So that's not, the pressure's not off of this program or this team. It's so fascinating from the standpoint that if they lose to Georgia, now in my book, if they play really well and lose to Georgia, I don't think there are serious issues with this program in any such way. Like if they lose 35-31, it's a colossal game, great game, and Georgia may go on as expected and win a national championship. Shoot, you just had two great teams on the field and somebody had to lose.
Right.
But especially if they lose and get dominated coming off the Michigan game, they're going to go into an off season and there's going to be uncertainty and questions, and people are going to be upset like anything we haven't seen in quite some time. Versus this could be one of the greatest redemption stories in the history of college football.
Yeah.
That I can't think of anything like it if they're able to pull this off.
Yeah, and that's where I think that pressure is. I'm sure Ryan Day, and name your coach / player who will be back next year, who isn't aware of that, what the narrative will be and whatnot. I think even that Clemson game we were talking about, coming out of that, yeah, there were a lot of questions. You needed to fix a lot of things that offseason, but there was like confidence that it would be done, I felt like, if I remember correctly. And I feel like if it's a similar situation and not like the time that Ohio State lost close to Clemson in 2019, I think, I don't feel that there is that same level of confidence in the fan base, and even, in the media, frankly. So, yeah, it certainly puts that added pressure on them. Now, pressure can be a good thing. I mean, there's that expression about pressure and diamonds, and I don't know exactly how it is, but this is a big test for these guys. I mean, you want pressure if you're Ohio State because that means you're playing in these games, right? So again, they just have to go out and do it. And, you can't get too crazy with things, but I also think you've got to let loose a little bit. And, I felt like Ryan Day, specifically on the offensive side of the ball, they called that game against Michigan tight. And, maybe it was, he was just concerned. He didn't want to do anything that might lose them the game for a second year in a row. He knows what a big deal it was. But, I think if you play a little loose in that first half, maybe you score another touchdown and it's a completely different game at the half and whatnot. So, I think you've got to just go out and play. This is an important game. It's a big game, but the only way I think they really have success is just like, take some shots, do some different things. Hopefully they have a play or two, that they designed, maybe not a poorly executed fake punt like against Michigan, but, some things that you haven't shown this year that, you've had a month plus now to work on some stuff. The last time they were in this situation in the 2014 season against Alabama, granted, Urban Meyer and a completely different staff, completely different players, but wide receiver Evan Spencer threw a touchdown, like something like that maybe you don't need it because the game goes your way, but have something ready if you do, and make sure you've practiced it enough that, like that fake punt, it doesn't get screwed up. I think Buckeye fans would hope you don't have to do that. But then I think you think back to that Alabama game, and that Michael Thomas catch is one of the memories that everyone always talks about, other than the Ezekiel Elliott run. So have something ready, play fun, play loose, and like you said, if you lose a close one to the best team in the country, I think most people will realize that this, what that is. There will always be people that are going to be very negative and whatnot, but I think you've just got to play, go out and play.